Hey everybody, this is going to be a real short project video. It's going to be really easy. This is going to be a great project for somebody that's brand new to leathercraft. You just want to make a little project and see how everything comes together. You don't need a sewing machine or anything like that. In fact, we're going to hand stitch this case here. This is the one that we make in the video, and you're going to see me hand sew that. I do have a video on hand sewing with an awl and 2 needles, so if you want to go back and watch that video, you certainly can. I'll put a link in the description to it. And these little notebooks, it's 3.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. These are really popular. You can find these online at Amazon or anything like that. You can also get them from Maker's Leather Supply. They're real popular. They're not very expensive. I think I bought a 3 or 4 pack, something like that. And I think they come in different sizes, but the 3.5 by 5.5 is what we're going to be making in this video. So let's go ahead and get started and make one of these. All right, so here I've got a 3/4 ounce butt off of a side. When I block in my sides for belt liners, I always cut the butt and the neck off, and that saves that for little projects like this. And so we're going to cut that out. You want to go ahead and just make sure that it's a nice firm piece. Since we're tooling this one, you can certainly cut this out of chap leather or some Horween Chrome XL or anything like that. I just think the 3/4 ounce, somewhere around that neighborhood, works out really well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and prep this just like we usually do with the blue painter's tape. I will say that this one did stretch a little more than I wanted it to. Anytime you're tooling that thin of leather, you got to kind of be careful. So if you want to line this and use poster board for your backing to keep it from stretching, that might work a little bit better, but it is going to make it heavier, so keep that liner really thin. And here we'll go ahead and get all the tooling done. I'm just going to show some of the tooling, not all of it. We've got videos for the tooling as usual that you can go back and watch if you want to learn more about that. But here we're going to go ahead and just do some floral tooling on the front and get that done right quick. Alright, so I've already oiled and antiqued this piece, so we're going to go ahead and pull the blue painter's tape off. We do have a video on our finishing techniques, so you can certainly go back and watch those. But now we've got this ready, and we're going to go ahead and get it ready for assembly. So we'll go ahead and take our pockets here. Like I said, this is 3/4 ounce. There's really no point in trying to really edge them, but you can certainly go ahead and slick those edges. If you've got a really small edger, you can certainly try to edge that. I found on this 3/4 ounce veg tan, it works better just to go ahead and just leave it a flush cut and just go ahead and slick it with just some water and just give that a little rub. You don't even have to do that. I just think it makes a nice finished look on the pockets. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is just measure in on each side, top and bottom. We're going to go ahead and measure in and put a mark at 3 inches, and that's going to set the pockets as far as where our glue is going to go ahead and glue these pockets in place, and that'll be the right measurement coming on the inside. So now that our glue has set up, we'll go ahead and glue these in place and just use those marks to kind of line everything up. If you measure those correctly, they should be square and true where you need them. Should have a little bit of overhang there. That's to trim and sand to make that edge nice and clean. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and just take a pencil and mark where the end of the pocket comes in, and we're going to go ahead and try to put a stitch right past the end of that pocket on each side, top and bottom, as we stitch. That's just going to keep that end down so it doesn't flip up over time and use. And we're just going to take our groover. This is just a Tandy groover. I think it's one of their little upper level groovers, and it works really good for this size thread that we're going to use in here, and the stitches on there. And that's what I use mainly on my belts and things like that. And so we'll just go ahead and groove a little line in there. You don't have to do this if you don't want to groove your stitches or have a groove for your stitches. And also if you're doing this at chap leather, you're probably not going to groove that. But if you're using veg, I think it makes a nice look. This is an overstitch wheel. This is a size number 6, and it's going to set 6 stitches per inch. And we're just going to go ahead and wheel that around. That's how I mark where my stitch holes need to be. And just be real careful with that and just run it right along inside that groove, and it'll make little dots there, and that'll show you where your stitches need to be when we stitch here in a minute. Okay, so here I'm using some waxed braided poly cord from Main Thread Company that I got from Maker's Leather Supply. This is a really good thread. It feels really nice. It's got a little waxiness to it, and I'm just using a size 1 harness needle. I also got these from Maker's Leather Supply. And you're just going to run the end through the eye of that needle, and then go ahead and pierce the thread a little ways down, and then pull some of that slack out. And you're basically creating that loop right there. Just pull some of the slack out and then pull the working side over the eye, and that ties it to the needle so that you don't lose the needle. The needle doesn't come off the thread when you're pulling it through the material. We'll do the same on the other side so that we have a needle on each end of the thread. And I did basically one full pull off of the thread spool, which is basically just your arms completely out to the side. That length there should be about 6 feet or so. And then we're going to go ahead and use an awl with a diamond-shaped awl to go ahead and make our holes in here. And I'm going to make my first stitch will tie down the corner of that pocket. So the first hole will be actually not including the pocket, just coming off right off the edge. The next hole will be on the pocket. And that's going to go ahead and just tie that corner down well so it doesn't flip up. And we'll just center those 2 needles up so we've got the same amount of thread on each side. We do have a complete video showing you how to hand stitch. You can go back and watch that. On this project, you could certainly use pricking iron since it's a flat project. That would work absolutely fine. But it's a good project too to kind of practice your sewing with an awl and 2 needles, and how you hold the needles and the awl at the same time and work your way around. So we'll go ahead and go through this. Again, if you want to check out that video that we did a while back, you can certainly get more information on hand sewing from that video. Okay, so now we've got the pocket sewn in. We've already trimmed off any excess from the pockets. Like I said, I like to leave a little feather around there so you can trim that flush with the body. And then we can go ahead and sand this. We're just going to sand the edges really nice, get them nice and clean, and then we'll edge and slick those as we go along. Now here's a little trick. As you can see, that edger can't really get low enough to get that little 3/4 ounce piece of leather, but what you can do is get just another piece of leather, a little scrap piece, lift it up off the bench and put it flush with that, and you can see how much better I can get a hold of that little thin piece of leather to edge that. That's just a little trick there for anytime you're trying to edge something that's fairly thin. You want to be sure that your edger is really sharp, but you can just slide that little piece of leather underneath there. That lifts it up off of the work surface enough to where now the edger can actually get in there. Be very careful because you can just cut through the leather edge and kind of make a mess of it. Now that we've got our edges all sanded and edged, we're going to go ahead and slick these. I'm just slicking this with my usual glycerin soap and water, and you could certainly use like a Martin's Mix or some other kind of edge solution on there if you prefer. This leather edges up really nicely, and so we're going to go ahead and do that. I've got a video showing how I do my edges if you'd like to look back at that as well and kind of learn what we're doing there, but it's just glycerin soap and water. Now that our edges have had a chance to dry, we're going to go ahead and dye the edges. I'm just using a Pro Oil dye in a dark brown. That's what I use on most of my edges, either that or a black. But we've got it here in one of these dye pens, and I've gotten to where I really like these dye pens just for kind of a quick solution to edging. I don't have to pour up a little cup of dye. Works really well. I still use the dauber and a cup on saddle parts because they're so thick and large on the edges that I want to be sure I get a good coverage with that dye. But you can certainly dye this with any color you want or anything. You can even use an edge coat if you'd like to. Now here I'm just going to give it one last wipe down with the tan coat. We've already done that when we did our finish work earlier before we assembled this project, but I always like to give it one little freshen up coat, and that also gives me the opportunity to go ahead and catch those edges once that dye is dried just a bit, and I can go ahead and catch those with some of that tan coat, and that's really going to shine those edges up and make them look really nice and clean and smooth. And this project is done. Now what we've got to do is put the notebook inside there. I like to take an awl or a screwdriver, something long and flat there that you can stick in there and just break any glue loose up against those stitches that may still be there. If you get a little crazy with your glue, that'll be glued down. So you want to kind of break that loose, and then our little notebook will slide right in there, and we'll be completely done with this project. All right, so as you can see, that's not a very difficult project to do. It's a great starter project. It gives you an opportunity to try some hand sewing without burning you out on it, because it's not a ton of hand sewing. I will say this, we made these out of the 3/4 ounce Herman Oak veg tan leather. This is a great project to kind of get rid of some of that. If you've got a lot of scrap, you can actually cut these pieces all out of the belly. If you've got some real nice firm areas in the belly there, you can cut a bunch of these out. They go together real quick. But when you're doing them out of the 3/4, you could certainly go 5 ounce. As you saw in this video, I used blue painter's tape when I prepped this for tooling. It still stretched out more than I would have liked it to. So the tooled side on the back, I just did a border. The tooled side actually did stretch a little more, so I had to actually stretch the other side just a little bit to make it more squared up so that it would go together well. Not a big problem, but if you are going to do some pretty extensive floral tooling, you might want to go ahead and just use poster board, a little poster board inset like we do on our belts and things like that. Glue that in, tool it up. That's really going to keep that from stretching very little at all, if any. But then you're going to need to line that because you're going to leave that poster board in there. And if you're going to use a liner in 3/4 ounce leather, I would probably stay around that 2 ounce as close as you can to 2 ounce, just so that these don't get real bulky. Just kind of use your judgment, but that is something that you're going to have to contend with when you're tooling 3/4 ounce leather. Sometimes it will stretch a little more. Another thing that you can do as well is just trace out the body of the pattern. You know, for your back, you could trace it out on your leather and cut that leather a little bit more wild, and then maybe even mist it and use a glass to glass that out to try to get that preliminary stretch out of it before you go and tool it. Kind of use your own judgment on that, but that is something to consider when you're doing them just single ply, not lined or anything. I think they have a really, really nice feel, not lined, and I think I will just deal with a little bit of stretch or maybe figure out another different way, because I think they need to be just kind of single ply like that with a couple pockets. Keeps them simple, keeps the price point down. But I hope you enjoyed that video. There is a pattern pack for this. I offer it in both the digital and the printed. This pattern pack is developed like our older patterns or like our smaller pattern packs are. So if you buy, even if you're in the United States and you'd prefer to just get the digital to save on the shipping cost of a printed pack, you can certainly get the digital version of this and print it out on your own printer. It will print out on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, so you can just print it on your own printer. Be sure and print that actual size or 100%. I've got measurements on there, so just check those when you print that off and make sure it's printing out the correct size and your printer's not scaling it at a different size. But if you don't want to mess with the printer, you just want us to mail it to you, we do offer it in a printed version as well. I appreciate you guys. There's links below to the sewing video that you can check out. If you haven't watched the hand sewing video that we did a few years ago, you can certainly check that out, and we'll see y'all in the next project video.